Hi, my name is Rakia. I'm here with my surprise. My question is for Ms. Winfrey. We all have moments in life where, we meet someone and we sort of know that that person is special. It's like this moment where you might go tell your friends, or it sort of connects for you and you know this person is a game changer. They're going to do something amazing. What was that moment for you? You call it an aha moment with Ava, where you knew that this was a history maker, a visionary. She was it.
Oh, that's a great question. Thanks for giving me that question. Actually, I had that moment first with David Oyelowo. David and I were in the trailer doing Butler, and David handed me the tape of, and he said, I did this little film.
She always makes me sound like Oliver Twist.
Anyway, I looked at the tape, I Googled Ava, I saw that she was an African-American woman, director, read a little bit of her history, and I emailed her, got her email address from David. Did I call you? I didn't call you.
You called me.
I did? I didn't. I emailed you first and said we're going to be friends, and I called her up and told her.
He emailed me and said we're going to be friends.
Yeah, we're going to be friends. Please send me your phone number if I can call you. Yeah, we're going to be friends. Send me your phone number. And I could feel from her countenance, from the spirit of her, that there was something inside her that I also had inside me. I could see that in David, and that's why I befriended David on the Butler. There's a, I call it, at my school, when I was looking for girls for my school, I call it the it factor. Those who have it recognize it in others. And I could sense from David a level of humility and a level of pure passion and desire to honor his calling, and the calling beyond just being an actor, but his calling as a human being, to honor what God had put him here to do. And I saw that in him because I have that in myself. And I told him we were going to be friends. I could see that he is favored. He is favored from on high. And I've had that favor, so I know what that looks like, and I wanted to do whatever I could to elevate that. And I could feel the same thing in Ava. And I think that part of my trajectory here on the planet has been to try to inspire and lift other people up. So when I saw that here was somebody who has that thing, that it thing, I wanted to do everything in my power to lift that up, to bring light to that, to bring attention to that. And so that's why it happened. We're just buds.
We'd be remiss if we didn't bring up the beauty of this film and the cinematography and the art direction and some of those choices. Round of applause for Mr. Bradford Young, our cinematographer. And Amy, you can speak to this, and Carmen even as well. I mean, two scenes that stick out for me is the opening scene when Carmen, you and David are you're getting him ready to go to the Nobel Peace Prize and fixing his tie and having just an intimate conversation. I mean, a beautiful way to open the film. It looks so real and emotional before we even met the characters. Carmen?
And Dr. King has some swag in that.
He does.
Surprisingly. Dr. King got some
Answer your question is?
Just the idea of how were you able to help articulate that kind of beauty and the being able to have lines that were about being a wife and being in love, because it was not easy for Coretta Scott King in this relationship with such an individual as Mark was, and the mission that he was on.
So if I'm understanding the question correctly, how to retain the elegance and the regalness that we have come to associate with Coretta?
You're talking about sexuality.
Yeah, let Oprah say that. So you're more courageous than I.
Yeah, I think David and I had always intended to make these people as authentic as a couple as possible, and that includes sensuality, that includes touching, that includes being intimate, and even if we haven't seen it before, I don't think in any way we felt we were doing a disservice to the legacy or to the heroism of these people by showing that they had human desires and human elements to them. In fact, I felt very strongly that we were doing them an absolute service by showing that they had the same desires and wants and frailties and foibles and doubts as the rest of us, because to then be able to achieve the things that they did, despite the fact that they are as human as the rest of us, makes them even more aspirational to me. It was an absolute privilege to flesh them out and to make them desirous of flesh and all of those things that a married couple are.
Thank you. We had a question here. Ma'am in the front.
Selma's emotionally riveting, and it grabs you, and the times that today, our contemporary times, are emotionally riveting also. And if Ferguson and if Eric Garner hadn't happened, and this film was still released today, what would the parallels that you're drawing, that people are drawing to those situations and Selma, what would they be if those two things hadn't happened, and what would you want the message to be of the film today?
Well, I mean, distressed race relations in this country is ambient. It's not just happening because of these two things. So when we were making the film, I mean, it's part of the atmosphere of this country. I certainly feel that as a person of color. So, these incidences are amplifying that in a very specific way, where it's feeling like it's very much at the forefront of what everyone's thinking about. But as a person of color in this country, I think about that all the time when my brothers walk out of the house, and I hope that they come back. And that's just always there. So, yes, this is a beautiful time where we're able to kind of, there's a magnifying glass on it. But it certainly, I don't think, would have been entirely different if these events hadn't happened. What was top of mind for me while making the film was the Voting Rights Act. That was all we were thinking about and talking about early on. I really thought that would be a big topic of conversation as we presented the film. The dismantling of the very act that we are chronicling its creation in the film. The violence to that act that has happened and is hard to put back together. So there's so much going on within the film that it's not all specific to Ferguson, I don't think. And hopefully when that's what art does, it continues to illuminate things as the years go on. What we will see in this film, Selma, hopefully if people are watching it 10 years from now, is something that we probably haven't even thought of yet. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does, thank you.
We'll go here on the side.
Hi everybody, great film, I really loved it. I'm Chuck Creekman from allhiphop.com, so I have a quick two-piece question for Ava and Oprah. For Ava, or rather for Oprah, I should say, how do we continue to get these type of engaging programs, not only in film, but also in TV, like the 90s or maybe the 80s, if that makes any sense to you? And my question for Ava is, have you gotten any response from the King family?
Yes.
And what is that response?
You want to switch? Switch questions?
Yeah.
Under the 80s or the 90s?
Oh, yeah, you do that.
You mean 80s and the 90s when there was an abundance of films about
Exactly.
centered on Black life, or not an abundance?
Everything from Glory to
That's right.
to
That's right. Yes, I understand. Yes, I mean, I think.
and making those films.
Well, Black artists and Black cinematic artists have been making those films. It really is that there's a certain gaze on them now. I think, that there's some of them that have kind of, I won't even say risen, there's some that have had a spotlight placed on them. But I mean, as a Black independent filmmaker, there's been a continuum of beautiful things made. There's been no drop off from the 80s to this time. The drop off has been who's watching them and paying them attention, right? And so I think now you have a resurgence of attention around some beautiful things, whether it be Fruitful Nation, 12 years, and The Butler last year, or this year with Belle, with Beyond the Lights, with Dear White People. I mean, it's there. There are more coming next year, but they've always been. And so I think the charge is to make sure that they remain in a place of consistency. And we talk a lot about Black, but what about Brown? What about Indigenous? What about Asian? I mean, it's just there's not enough diversity behind the camera. It's really about giving the storytellers of all kinds the ability to let their voice be heard. It's my hope.
Yes, we have heard from the Kings. Last weekend in Santa Barbara, at my home, we had a celebration with all of the civil rights leaders who were actually a part of the film. John Lewis and Andrew Young and Julian Bond and Reverend Lowry and Diane Nash and all of them were there. And along with Bernice King and Martin Luther King Jr. III. They've seen the film now at least 2 times. They're really impressed with Carmen. They think that Carmen really depicted their mother beautifully and felt equally so about David's portrayal of Dr. King. So they're pretty pleased with the film.
Do we have time?
Hello, I'm Danielle from HelloBeautiful.com. Ava named us. Yes. This question is for, as well, you and Oprah, kind of a double-parter as well.
Like a t-shirt.
Thank you. You said it, Oprah.
Very good, my sister.
Help notice.
I was hoping you would, girl. That's why I did it. So Ava, obviously you guys have spoke to this a lot. You make a lot of films that share a human experience. And it was really powerful to see that with Dr. King, seeing that he also needed people to pour into him for him to be the leader of this movement, which was very beautiful. How do you do that? How do you dig into a human experience of someone from our past that's mystified?
Right. I mean, you just have to really deconstruct all the things that you think that you know about him and really look to the fact that this is a brother from Atlanta. Father was a preacher, grandfather was a preacher. He didn't want to be a preacher. Went to Boston, fell in love with his fine sister, right? Beautiful sister. She was a little older than him. Most people don't know that. They fell in love. He moves to Atlanta because he wants to, from Atlanta to Montgomery, wants to get away from his father, wants to have a little room to breathe and be his own man. 2 seconds of him arriving there, he gets swept up by the local leaders. He's handsome, he can talk pretty well. Have him start talking about this bus boycott thing. Have him start to talk about what's going on with Mrs. Parks, and he gets swept up in history. That's the way we approach it as a person and their real life story, as opposed to 4 words and being your whole life is reduced to 4 words, to I have a dream. I mean, what would any of us do if we were reduced to 4 words? It was so much more than that. And so that was my approach, is just to try to track his life and get underneath the meat of it.
Well, and listen, Ava is brilliant because I think you all probably recognize, we didn't have the IP for this, and so we were not allowed to use any of his original speeches. And there were times where, we needed another scene, and literally the producers would be on the phone and say, Ava, can you write that this weekend? Can you go back and channel Dr. King and write that this weekend? Which she did. So every single word coming out of his mouth for those speeches, Ava wrote them. And did it in such a way that in the end, Bernice King says to you,
that it's the best interpretation of my father I've ever seen.
Why weren't you allowed to use the speeches?
David, I'll stay with you. This may have to be the last word, but Sidney Poitier said he chooses to do his work as a reflection of his values. Is this a project that you've chosen, sir, as a reflection of who you are?
Yeah, never before have I engaged in an artistic endeavor that so brings everything I am as a man together. I'm a Christian myself. I have 4 children. Because of my faith, sacrificial love in the face of injustice, these are the things I hold dear. So, as a man, as a storyteller, as a citizen of the world, what you see when you watch Selma is everything I value and aspire to be. One of the things I was so glad that we showed, 2 of the things, was how humanity came together to fight this cause together. Black, white, people of several faiths coming together. I think that's the most beautiful thing we do as human beings, is coming together. I also feel as a man, one of the things I was so proud of with this film was Ava bringing to light the women in this film. I have a beautiful wife. I have an incredible daughter. I am a big fan of women. You know, they were marginalized within this movement, even though it was a movement against injustice and inequality. They were just as brilliant, they were just as bright, they were just as courageous and tenacious. You know, I just feel one of the greatest blessings of my life was also seeing Ava and Oprah behind the monitor while we were shooting this thing. That, to me, is definitely a realization of Dr. King's dream. This a beautiful black woman telling this story so beautifully, this other beautiful black woman helping us get this story told. This wouldn't have happened 50 years ago in terms of them helping us get this done. And so, if this is one of, if not the greatest things I do with my life, I will be happy with it.
Ladies and gentlemen,